Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 4th chapter. Pretty much a continuation from Isaiah, the 3rd chapter, right? We see here that, I believe starting from the 2nd or so, right? Isaiah begins to prophesy, especially concerning this prophecy that would come, and that would come with chaos, destruction, lawlessness, anarchy, right? He mentions here that in that day, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, even to the point where people are going to be seeking others that are, in a better off position to sort of take, leadership and try to instill order. And so when we get to Isaiah chapter 4, and it starts off in verse 1, in that day, right? Isaiah is still referring to that time, all right, where the Lord would bring this judgment, okay, and it would the 7 women taking hold of one man would be a result of that, okay. So this is the book of Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. And so that day would be the time of calamity, right? A time of judgment in which you're going to have a lot of individuals dying, right? People are going to be suffering. People are going to be in times of distress and destitute. Okay, and that's what's going to lead to these 7 women here. Now, it says 7, all right, but in that time, it could be more, it could be less, all right, but it's not going to be that, every man who's alive is going to have literally exactly 7 women that are going to take hold of him. But that's to put emphasis on the need, okay, for a man of the Lord in that time. So when it says here, take hold of one man, you can imagine that there's going to be a scarcity of men, because a lot of men are going to die in these hard times. And those that are going to be preserved are really those that are believers in Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. The majority of those are the ones that are going to be preserved alive. And then by seeing them alive and in a good condition, women are going to flock to them for secure, right? Or succor, for safety. So as it says here, they're going to take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. As in, you don't need to provide these things for us. Like we'll take care of that ourselves. But right now, the most important thing on our mind is, as it says, only let us be called by thy name, which is to say, take us under your household, right? Like make us your women, because especially back in the ancient world, that is what would come with the being under this man. Means you're now protected by him, right? You're provided for by him, and all the other things that come along with that. So as it says, only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. Now in the ancient world, it was a reproachful thing for a woman to be like unmarried or childless, right, or barren. And so even when you go to the time of the prophet Samuel's mother, Hannah, that's why she was so stressed. Okay, as it says, the adversary, which is I think it's Penina, right, or Samuel's father's, I think it was Elkanah, if I remember his name correctly, his other wife, and pretty much it was like scorning her for being childless. So it was a very reproachful thing, which that word reproach goes into that, and shame. But in this time, in the setting of things, this is going to involve more than just the reproach of being childless, but also the fear and the danger of being alone in this time. And when you look at certain countries or certain areas, or even certain times in history where things have gotten so bad that anarchy and lawlessness had set in, these were byproducts, right? People would be looking for help. Okay, and typically a woman would be looking for a man who could protect her, because you had men who would protect you, but then you also had men who would, uh, you know, prey upon you, right? And so all of these things are going to be what they're trying to flee from by seeking a man of the Lord and taking hold of him. And it's going to be such a desperate time that, imagine today, right? An average individual, if a dude is talking to one chick, or let's say 4 or 5, and they all find out that the same guy, they're talking to the same guy, what usually ends up happening? They they despise that so much that 4 strangers can form a group chat and become best friends to try and get back at this one man because they feel like they were being played. So now imagine how bad things have to get for the tables to turn to where they don't care, right? A woman is not going to care if there are already 3 or 4 or 5 women already with this man, as long as they can be a part of that and they can then be protected and taken care of, they're going to do it. So that's what that taking hold is going to look like. It's not going to be like a girl is coming up to ask you on a date and then you say no and then she's embarrassed and then she runs away. That running, they ain't no running away, right? Today you get turned down from a date. Okay, you just go find somebody else. In that time, that's your life, So it's not going to be as as lighthearted as that. Anyway, in verse 2, it says, "In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious." So now Isaiah starts to transition a bit more into, the if you were to travel through the timeline of the destruction, as you go through the destruction, right, then would come the salvation at the end. I believe Matthew, the 24th chapter, mentions that immediately after the days of those tribulation, or the tribulation of those days, the Son of Man is going to appear. All right. And that is going to come with what we're now about to read here from verse 2 on down. Okay. So as it says, "In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious." And so when you deal with like the branch of the Lord, now there are certain precepts where you read the branch and it's in reference to Yahushua or the Messiah. Okay. But I believe here in Isaiah 4:2, it's a bit more directed towards the people, all right, of Israel. So the branch, right, a branch sometimes is likened on to like offspring, right, or a planting, which we know the Lord has compared Israel to a planting, right, a vineyard, okay, or this calmly and pleasant tree that he has planted. So here, that branch of the Lord that's going to be beautiful and glorious is really going to be those, as we read later on in this verse, that are escaped of Israel, right? In other words, the remnant that's left, or the elect. They're going to be the ones that the Lord is going to deliver, as the scriptures say that the Lord is going to, let me actually pull it up, beautify the meek with salvation. Right, Psalms 149 verse 4, "For the Lord taketh pleasure in his people, he will beautify the meek with salvation." So as it reads, "And the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel." So those that are escaped are likened unto those that, because number one, what are they escaping? They're escaping the judgment. And the escaping of that is going to be because the Lord has preordained them to be delivered, right? And not to suffer the judgment that would come in this time. So that we know, or those we know, are going to be the elect. So as it says here, "The fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them." And this goes back to the blessings, right? When you read in the book of Deuteronomy, it talks about that, right? The curses were like the land not yielding its fruit to you, but the reverse of that is as it says here, the fruit being excellent, right, and calmly. So that starts to go into the reward, right, or the land flowing with milk and honey and all those things that would come for the elect. Verse 3, "And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem," right, these are synonymous with those that are escaped of Israel. Yeah, and why does it say he that is left and he that is escaped? Because majority of the rest of the nation will be suffering judgment, right? They will be destroyed. through the various means of judgment. So those that are left or preserved are going to be those that the Lord has mercy on and finds worthy, as one that has been tried in the fire and found, worthy unto the Lord. So he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy. Why? Because they're going to be delivered and changed, okay, and made fully holy, right? It says here, even every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. And now if we believe we should be able to cross-reference this. So synonymously here in the book of Revelation, yeah, so it is mentioned here in Revelation 13, but I think the one I'm looking for here is, 17 is good. Yeah, we can take a look at 17. This is Revelation 17:8. It says, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition, which is destruction. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. So this is like the inverse, right? Those that are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the earth, they're gonna sort of be taken in this. When you read in Revelation, was it 13 as well? That talks about those that wandered after the beast, right? And eventually there would also be those that would succumb to the beast. But what I'm really looking for here is, I think 20 is good. Revelation 20 and 15. Yeah, we can actually read from 14. It says here, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, right? Which we know is going to manifest by way of those nuclear missiles, or the fire from those nuclear missiles in World War III. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. There you go. So even though it's written in sort of in the inverse way, you get the message, right? If you're not written in the book of life and you were cast into the lake of fire, you were destroyed. So if you were written in the book of life, then you would be one of those who were preserved. And so coming back to Isaiah chapter 4, verse 3, that's why it mentions here that every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem, which is like having your name in that book of life, i.e., you've been preordained to be delivered or to gain salvation. Verse 4, when the Lord, so now remember, right, that when you see that colon, it's a joining of context directly from the subsequent verse to the preceding one. So it's saying that this is related to this. Okay, so I have that colon over there. So it mentions, Isaiah is basically saying in the same train of thought, right? Those that are escaped, the remnant, those that are preserved, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion. Now, what represents the filth of the daughters of Zion? Wickedness. So the way the Lord is going to wash that away, you have people that will say, oh, God hates the sin, but not the sinner. Dude, like, if you have, let me give you an example. If you have a leak in your house, say from your roof, right? And water just keeps on dripping and dripping and dripping. And you're like, man, I really don't like the fact that my carpet keeps on getting wet by this leakage. So I'm going to put a bucket over there. That's not solving the main problem, right? In order to solve the main problem, which pretty sure everybody does, is they would find the root cause to say, what is causing that leak in my roof? And then fix that rather than putting a bucket here, every single time it starts to leak. So when you say God hates the sin, not the sinner, how do you stop the sin? How do you stop your carpet from getting wet? Yeah, you can put a bucket there, but that's not going to stop the problem. The problem is the leak. So the cause of the water dripping is that leakage. Similarly, the cause of the sin would be the sinner. So you take out the sinner, right? So when it says here, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, he is going to destroy the wicked Israelites out of the nation, to purge the nation. and shall have so imagine how you would put gold into fire to purge the impurities out of it and then pull it out the fire refined and pure. Imagine the Lord taking the nation of Israel and putting them into this furnace, and through that furnace the wicked of Israel would be purged and destroyed, and those that remain would be the elect, right, the chosen. So, as it says here, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment. Now, the scriptures tell you that when blood has been shed in the land, that land cannot be cleansed, but by the blood of him that shed it. And there was a lot of bloodshed that was going on at that time in the actual land of Jerusalem, but here applying to Jerusalem as a people, there is still a lot of bloodshed that gets shed in the quote unquote midst of Jerusalem, right? And so by the Lord bringing that destruction, he's going to purge, all right, or cleanse that bloodshed by shedding the blood of those wicked Israelites. All right, so it says here, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And when you go into that word burning in the, let's see, which one is it? So we have here burning, ba'ir, and it says here to burn, to consume, right? The Most High's wrath, to remove. And sometimes when you have a lot of these definitions, right? Remember, this is an outline of biblical usage. So this is possible ways the word can be used, like in context. What does it mean in various precepts? So sometimes what you can do is when you look here at the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon, in this case Gesenius, and you look at the full entry, it gives you a better sense. Meaning, you can look in here and scan. Okay, based on the various definitions for this word burn, one case here is to feed upon, to eat, to consume. One here is to especially to consume with fire, right, to burn up. And then they show you which precepts that use this word are referring to this word in this definition, like to burn up, literally, right? So if you're reading here, we're in Isaiah 4, we would scan through here and see, where is here we go. So you can see here, let's see. Yeah, Isaiah 4:4. And then you can see, oh, well, what is the use case here? Like, how is the word burned or burning used in reference to Isaiah 4? So here it says, Isaiah 6:13, yet a tenth part shall remain in the land, and this shall again be exterminated. Then you have Numbers 24:22. The Kenites shall be exterminated. You have Isaiah 4:4. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion with the spirit of judgment and with the spirit of extermination, i.e., by judging and exterminating the wicked by his spirit or his divine power. So the use of that burning, it's like a form of exterminating or cleansing. And we know ultimately how is the Lord going to do that? By way of that second death. Okay, and that's going to be an actual literal burning, but also having a spiritual cleansing effect of bringing back these wicked Israelites in the kingdom as renewed, rejuvenated, and righteous Israelites. So in verse 4, right, as it's saying here, the Lord is pretty much going to purge the wickedness out of Israel through the spirit of judgment and burning. And that's going to manifest really in the time of Jacob's trouble. Okay, that's where the great judgment is going to come forth. And through that judgment, the nation will be cleansed. And then obviously the whole entire earth in righteousness. Verse 5, and the Lord Yahweh will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies. And we know Mount Zion is referring to Israel. So it says here, upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies, which would be the gatherings of Israelites. Remember, in this time, this is talking about, if you're reading it in chronological order, the Lord has said, the scriptures say that he's going to basically beautify the meek with salvation, right? He's going to deliver his elect. They're going to be preserved. They're going to be rewarded. And then he's going to cleanse the nation of the wicked ones. And then, right, he's going to create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion. And where is going to be the ultimate dwelling place? The scriptures say the Lord is going to take Israel back to the Holy Land. Okay, so as it says here, upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies, which are going to be the congregation of Israel, he's going to create a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defense. And this is like in reference when you go back to the time of the Exodus, how the Lord used a chariot, because that's what it was, even though it was described as a pillar of, was it a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night? The chariot wasn't actually on fire, but it was the light that he emitted that looked like, you know, a pillar of fire or whatnot in the air. So similarly, you know, this sort of gives you the visual of in the kingdom, you know, imagine the Jerusalem, right, or the Holy Land having like chariots flying about it or above it, you know, defending, right, the area. Okay, like how today you'd go to certain areas, you'd have security cameras and all of that. But you can imagine the kingdom of Israel being so glorious. And then, as it mentions here, this cloud and shining, right, of a flame of fire by night being upon every dwelling place for a defense upon the glory. And the glory is going to be the dwelling of Israel. So you can imagine that visual of like chariots flying all about. Sometimes we see them now, but it's going to be more prevalent, right, with their presence more in that land, right, scouring, defending, you know, all of that. Not to say that we're going to really need a defense, but you get the message. As it says here in verse 6, and there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and for a covert from storm and from rain. And, you know, if you look at this in the literal sense, obviously it just means like you're going to have a place to dwell, right? You're going to have a place, a house to stay in. You're going to be protected from the heat, right, in the daytime, from the storm, and so on and so forth. But when you look at it in terms of the meaning, is to convey the message of peace, right, of being provided for, taken care of, and not really having want, right, or need for shelter or safety or any of these things. Okay, because that's going to be the reward that we are going to inherit in the kingdom, starting with those that are escaped of Israel, i.e. the elect. And that brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 4th chapter. So as we see here, it's pretty much starts off with the preceding chapters, right, the time of destruction leading into the time of, you know, extreme destruction that creates a scenario or an environment for women, right, to want to cleave to men of the Lord for protection. And then it leads into, okay, then what happens after that, right? You have the remnants that are delivered, you know, they're rewarded, they're beautified, and ultimately have this safe and protected dwelling place, which is really going to take place in the kingdom. All right. So it's like that transition from all hell breaking loose, right, and the things that happen there into what ends up happening after that for those that survive it, into that reward. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.